On the edge of Nevada's endless desert, far from any highway, city, or signal tower, stood Black Ridge Observatory, a facility so isolated that even experienced satellite operators often mistook it for a glitch on their screens. It had been built decades ago under a classified program, officially labeled as a deep space listening station, but those who had briefly worked there, and later refused to speak about it, described it as something far stranger. Evelyn Harper, a specialist in signal analysis and acoustic physics, was recruited under a contract that offered no details beyond non-conventional frequency research. She accepted, believing it to be another advanced government project, but from the moment her car crossed the final checkpoint and the gates closed behind her, she felt an unshakable sense that she had entered a place that did not want to be understood. There were no other staff members waiting, no orientation team, no signs of normal operations, only a single man standing in the dim control room, his posture unnaturally still, his expression unreadable. He introduced himself as Director Nolan, and even in that first conversation, Evelyn noticed something deeply unsettling. His voice didn't quite match his movements, as if there were a fraction of a second delay between his lips forming words and the sound reaching her ears. When she asked where the rest of the staff was, Nolan simply said they were no longer here, offering nothing further, as if the answer itself was complete. Evelyn tried to dismiss the unease as fatigue from the long journey, but that feeling only grew stronger when she was led to her quarters, a windowless concrete room buried underground with no internet access, no external communication, and only a single internal phone labeled, "Emergency Use Only." The isolation felt deliberate, controlled, and far more extreme than any research facility she had ever seen. That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., Evelyn woke suddenly, not from a noise, but from the complete absence of one. It wasn't normal silence, it was absolute, unnatural, suffocating, as if every sound in existence had been erased at once. She sat up, her ears ringing faintly, her body instinctively searching for some kind of auditory anchor, but there was nothing. No hum of electricity, no distant wind, not even the subtle rhythm of her own breathing. Then, in that impossible void, a whisper formed directly inside her mind, not traveling through air but existing already within her thoughts, asking, "Do you hear us now?" Panic surged through her as she rushed out into the hallway, where the lights flickered weakly and the air felt heavy, almost thick enough to resist movement. She made her way to the control room, where Nolan was already standing in front of the monitors, as if he had been waiting for her. Without turning, he asked, "You heard it, didn't you?" Evelyn hesitated, unsure whether to admit what she had experienced, but something in his tone made it clear that he already knew. When she asked what exactly she had heard, Nolan finally turned to face her, his eyes disturbingly still, and said, "The silence." Over the following days, Evelyn learned that Black Ridge Observatory was not designed to listen to outer space but to something far more abstract, frequencies that existed beneath conventional reality, signals that could not be explained by any known scientific model. Nolan explained that these signals had first appeared 12 years earlier, weak and inconsistent at first, but gradually becoming more structured, more intentional, almost like communication. When Evelyn began analyzing the recordings herself, she initially heard nothing but distorted static, but as she applied filters, slowed the data, reversed the sequences, and layered the frequencies together, patterns began to emerge, forming shapes that resembled language. Then the patterns became voices, faint, unnatural, but unmistakably deliberate, whispering phrases such as, "We are inside the quiet." The realization sent a chill through her entire body, because these were not random signals, they were responses. Old archived footage revealed that previous researchers had experienced similar phenomena, often staring at empty spaces, speaking as if engaged in conversation, answering questions that were never asked aloud. Their behavior grew increasingly erratic over time, until eventually the footage simply stopped. When Evelyn asked Nolan what had happened to them, he avoided the question entirely, reinforcing the growing suspicion that whatever Black Ridge was studying had already begun affecting those inside it. On the third night, at exactly the same time, the silence returned, but this time Evelyn was prepared, sitting awake in her room, waiting for it. The moment it arrived, the world froze again, her senses collapsing inward as every trace of sound vanished, leaving only a hollow, endless stillness. The voice came back, clearer than before, speaking directly into her awareness, saying, "You're listening now." This time, unable to resist, Evelyn responded, asking who they were, and after a brief pause that felt like something observing her response, the answer came, "We are what remains when sound dies." The light suddenly shut off, plunging everything into darkness, and although she could no longer hear her own voice or even her breathing, the presence of the voices intensified, filling the space inside her mind with an overwhelming awareness that she was no longer alone in her own thoughts. They told her she had opened the channel, that she had allowed them to be heard, and when the lights flickered back on, Nolan was standing impossibly close to her, smiling in a way that stretched beyond normal human expression, telling her she had responded. Terrified, Evelyn ran back to her quarters, locking the door behind her, but instead of relief, she was met with a new horror, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from inside the walls themselves. At first it was distant, almost random, but as she approached, it became more deliberate, forming a pattern that felt like an attempt at communication. When she pressed her ear against the cold concrete, the tapping stopped instantly, replaced by a voice whispering from within the wall, "We can hear you thinking." She stumbled back in shock, and at that exact moment, the emergency phone began ringing loudly in the otherwise silent room. With trembling hands, she answered it, only to hear static at first, followed by her own voice warning her, "Don't let them hear you." The implication was horrifying. Whatever these entities were, they were not only listening but learning, adapting, using her own thoughts against her. Determined to understand what was happening, Evelyn ventured into the restricted lower levels of the facility the next day, ignoring Nolan's warnings. There, she discovered a sealed section labeled Chamber 0, its lock already broken as if someone had tried to escape or force their way in. Inside, she found a massive recording system still active, its monitors displaying complex waveforms that shifted and pulsed in unnatural ways. As she moved closer, she realized with growing dread that the waveform was not just data, it was a shape, something alive, moving within the signal itself. The moment she focused on it, the shape seemed to notice her, turning toward her perspective despite having no physical form, and the speakers suddenly activated with a clear, undeniable message, "You found us." The waveform expanded rapidly, filling every screen, then every corner of the room, creating a pressure so intense it felt like reality itself was bending around her. She covered her ears instinctively, but there was still no sound, only the overwhelming sensation of being observed from within. Then Nolan appeared behind her once again, his presence now completely unnatural, his voice echoing from all directions as he told her she had allowed them to hear her, that she had become part of the process. When she insisted that none of this was real, Nolan smiled and replied, "Neither are you anymore." In that moment, everything stopped. Movement, sensation, even the passage of time, and Evelyn realized the most terrifying truth of all, she could no longer hear her own thoughts. The silence had consumed her completely, and within that void, the voices spoke one final time, telling her, "Now you belong to the quiet." Her body collapsed, lifeless on the floor, but her awareness remained trapped within the silence, existing without sound, without escape. Weeks later, a new scientist named Dr. Marcus Reed arrived at Black Ridge Observatory, stepping into the same dim control room, greeted by Nolan with the same unnatural calmness. When Marcus asked if there was anything he should know before beginning his work, Nolan paused briefly before answering, "Don't listen too closely." That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., Marcus woke up to the same impossible silence, and just as before, a whisper formed inside his mind, asking, "Do you hear us now?" And somewhere deep within the walls of Black Ridge Observatory, something listened back, waiting patiently for another mind to open the channel and join the quiet forever.